You know, the White Sox have been presenting our Game Changers series since 2017. In fact, I was honored to be able to be on the first Women in Sports panel that inaugural year. And I'm really thrilled that our organization is committed to keeping the series going. We really feel it's our responsibility to drive really meaningful conversations about issues that are really important to our community and make sure that through those conversations, we're doing our part to keep momentum going on the social change that we're talking about. Um, I have to just take a moment and say that you talk about timing. The fact that we're holding this panel discussion today on a day when not only the sports industry, but really people across our country, and I think even globally, are still reveling in the excitement of the news of Kim Ng being named general manager of the Florida Marlins. What an amazing trailblazer she is. You know, Kim's hire, it serves as an affirmation to her grit and determination, but as important, it serves as such an amazing inspiration. And I couldn't help but think about Amira Handras, a 12-year-old who tried out for our ACE program and was the first young woman to be hired on her talent and skills to be a part of our ACE team. And I think about how what Kim has done over the years and reaching the pinnacle as the general manager of a professional sports team, of a Major League Baseball team, really is an inspiration to young girls and really even women like myself. I know there are so many of us who are absolutely reveling in dancing in the glass that Kim shattered. So with that, I think it's such a wonderful day that we're having this presentation, this really important conversation. I know you're excited as I am to hear from our great panel of guests today, women who are breaking barriers, inspiring change, and really paving the way for a new generation of young women working in male-dominated industries. Again, I want to say thank you to Modelo Especial for partnering with us and presenting today's conversation. And now to kick off our program, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Chicago sports reporter, Leila Rahimi. Leila?
Christine, thank you. And a huge thank you to the White Sox for having me on. It's nice to see everybody. We sincerely do thank you for joining us for this appropriately timed game-changing event. And once again, a huge thank you to Modelo Especial, the sponsor who allows us to have events like this today. I'm really looking forward to facilitating such a motivating conversation with women who are transforming their industries through their work and new norms that they set, and adjusting careers for a family life as well. It is possible to be both a fulfilled mother and a successful career woman. I truly tip my hat to them. And before we dive into this, we would like to encourage you to submit questions for panelists, but there's only one way to do that in order to get heard. We have time at the end of this session for Q&A, so we want you to direct message in the bottom right-hand side of your chat. You can see how you can do that to CWSPR. If you submit your question to CWSPR specifically, privately, then there's a good chance that that will get answered during our Q&A portion of this program. The last 10 to 15 minutes are going to be dedicated to answering as many questions as we can. Again, direct message CWSPR privately with a question that you hope to get answered during our Q&A portion. And if anybody wants to post on social media, you can use the hashtag CWS Game Changers. That is all one word, CWS Game Changers. So without further ado, I would like to introduce this outstanding panel of women who I am looking forward to hearing from myself. First, we have the Chicago Bears Director of Marketing, Elaine Delos Reyes. Ann Legan with Constellation Brands. She is the Vice President of Brand Marketing in their beer division. Michele Meyer-Shipp, Major League Baseball's Chief People and Culture Officer, and Sheena Quinn, the Chicago Director of Public Relations, Senior for the Chicago White Sox. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for having me.
And thanks again to our panel as well, and everybody who decided to join us on this Zoom. We are appreciative of you spending some time this afternoon with us. So first and foremost, we know your titles, but I would also like to expand on how each one of you got into your field. So I'm going to start with you, Elaine. You have the Monday Night Football game tonight, so we'll start with the Bears first. How did you get into your field and come to your position?
Hi, thanks everyone for joining. So I'm Elaine. I started at the Bears 8 years ago, and so I've been in the NFL family for my entire full-time career. So I started at the National Football League as an intern. I also worked for the Eagles for a little bit, and now I'm at the Bears.
And next up is Anne. Anne with Constellation. How did you come to your position and start with your company?
Sure. I've been in marketing for over 20 years with Constellation now for 7. Had the opportunity to really advance when I moved into Constellation as a vice president, and opportunity to work on some amazing brands that were at a stage of high growth. And so really took on a strategic opportunity that I hadn't had before in my career to really come in and grow these brands.
And Michele with Major League Baseball, a position that I think is going to be really, really utilized in the coming years to become their Chief People and Culture Officer. How did that happen?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's been an interesting 7 weeks. I've been in the role now for 7 weeks. I'm new to the sports industry, but it's actually the perfect culmination of all of my career experiences. I'm an employment lawyer by trade who hated litigating, realized that I loved people, and that I loved helping organizations do things to help people thrive and grow. So this role literally allows me to do just that, overseeing HR, diversity and inclusion, and our office operations. I am literally engaged with our people every day, and I'm really excited to be here.
And then Sheena, who I have had the pleasure of working with at the White Sox a time or two. How did you come to your position with the White Sox, and how did you move up in the ranks to get there?
So before I joined the White Sox family, I actually spent the better part of over a decade with a women-owned business called PCI. They actually are a integrated communications firm. I spent a long time there learning from some really, really wonderful mentors. Just women that owned the communications agency, that nurtured their staff, also cared about philanthropic community efforts, as well as just overall issues management and overall connecting with audiences, it's been helpful throughout my path here. And then, I have to give all credit to my boss, Scott Reifert, because I don't think that my resume is probably the traditional path of people that normally land in the position that I am in, but he saw potential here when he spoke with me and gave me the job as director of public relations. I think now this is going to be either my 5th or 6th season, but I feel like I'm part of the family here.
And you guys touched on it a little bit, but take me back to your personality, the seed that was planted in order for you all to come into your roles. What motivates you to do the work that you do? And this time I'm going to start with Michele.
Yeah, so great question. It's funny. I think back to when I was coming up, as a young girl, my mom always told me that I had a passion for people. She's like, you're always connecting with people. You're always trying to engage in a dialogue and help people, connect the dots with each other. And for me, that's what it's really been about. It's been about my connection and my desire to help human beings. So that really is what drove me to this work. And it's what, like I said earlier, it made me realize, hey, litigating is not for me because I don't like the fight. I actually prefer the proactive engagement of helping people, be their best selves in their careers. So I knew from early on that this was the work that I would want to do.
And it's interesting to me because when you think about employment law, it does take on that idea of diversity.
Yes.
Out of principle and out of the law. So how are you looking forward to promoting that in Major League Baseball?
Well, what's really cool, and Commissioner had a really great insight around this, because a lot of companies have diversity and HR totally separate. But the bottom line is everybody in an organization owns diversity and inclusion. We all have an opportunity to be inclusive. We all have the opportunity to be allies. And in HR, a lot of our policies and processes need to have, levers in there to make sure that we don't have bias and things of that nature. So the beauty of this role is that I get to infuse D&I, policies and practices into everything that we do. And as I'm engaging with our people, we literally can give them, tricks and tools and strategies on how they too can each own and drive D&I. So it's I think it's a great blending of roles that are traditionally kept separate.
And now, Anne, I want to flip that question over to you. What has motivated you to get to this position?
Yeah, I think for me, I work in the beer industry. It's a ton of fun. You bring people together. And when I had the opportunity to interview at Constellation, with the opportunity to work on Modelo, it was a brand that was growing fast in the US, but not a lot of people had ever tried it. And so there was a huge challenge in that. And I love a big challenge. And what was interesting when I went through the process, I had no beer experience, but I had a ton of marketing experience. And the folks at Constellation, the CMO, Jim Sabia, who I ended up working for, took a chance on me. And really, they wanted to bring fresh perspective and thinking into the company. So they took a chance on someone who hadn't worked in beer, but I obviously had a lot of marketing experience that I could bring to the table. So it was just a perfect timing for me where I could grow, bring something, into the company that I had learned along the way, and at the same time, really expand my horizons and my marketing capabilities and really make a difference.
Elaine?
So I would say my biggest motivator has been my family and my parents. So my parents moved 27 times. By the time I was in junior high, and so they were always moving for a better opportunity, and so really following that American dream. And so I do want to make them proud. And so they were used to hearing a lot of no's, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And when I had pursued the job at the NFL, I had heard similar things, and so really use that as my motivation. Really enjoying what I do now. I work at the Bears. It's the oldest team in the NFL, and they have a very loyal fan base, season ticket holders. And really our responsibility in the marketing department is to make sure that there's the next generation of Bears fans. And it's hard to do that when you don't have games with fans in it, and also just limited tickets. And so it's a good challenge. And so having just a wonderful team around you also motivates me as well.
And Sheena?
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be similar to Elaine and Michelle's. I think growing up, I'm fortunate enough to have had two really wonderful parents who told us that we could do anything. My mom emigrated here when she was 16, and I think from there she kind of felt when she had a family like the sky was the limit. And growing up where we did, there weren't too many people that I think aimed high, but my mom didn't really hold us back from anything that we wanted to do. In fact, when I was younger, I think I was a pain in the butt to everybody in my family and my community, probably. Like, I was the only girl that insisted on playing on an all boys team, right? So I think for me, it was I felt like I had the talent and the interest and want to do something. And I took that moving forward, even far beyond my basketball career ended a long time ago. But I think it carries forth in the work that I do today, and really to the position that I am as the head of PR. My job is really to focus on seeing people beyond the jerseys, right? Like seeing the heart of the organization. And at the White Sox, I'm really, really fortunate that there are so many stories within the organization that I think people don't know about. Even today, as we talk about Kim Eng, I'm reminded of people like Christine and the fact that she's introducing us into this panel. She has been somebody who's been with the organization for decades. And also I get to celebrate some stories like Grace Witt, who Kim mentioned in her introductory press conference today. Grace has been with the organization for almost 4 decades, and she worked in baseball operations at a time when I think there probably weren't a whole lot of women there. But I think Kim gave Grace probably the highest compliment today when she said no one messes with Grace, because that's very, very true. And she's one of the legends walking around the hallways of the ballpark these days.
Yeah, Christine is a font of knowledge. I wish she would talk more. That's just my own personal request. If you're hearing this, Christine, we like it when you discuss everything. Take that big picture, look at it. And also, just as we wrap up the leadership portion of this discussion, I want to ask you all, what is one key leadership lesson that you've learned along the way? Anne, I want to start with you this time.
Sure. I think the biggest thing is leadership is not about authority. It is about influence. It really is about forging connections and relationships and being able to influence others in a way that they go with you. And I think that is probably the most critical thing. If you're really trying to lead, it is about having those personal connections, earning respect and respecting others and being empathetic to others' plight, so that you can really, be influential in whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Elaine, what do you think?
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. I would also say, I was thinking about technology. I mean, it's great that we can have so many people participate on this panel and have this great audience. But just as I think about great leaders, I would say definitely get that FaceTime. I feel like technology is this double-edged sword where it's really convenient, but we need to, get out of behind the email and get that FaceTime, especially when we're all back in the office, of course.
And then on leadership, just the same questions for Sheena and Michele. I think, Sheena, we've ended with you the last couple of times. So I'll end with Michele this time. Sheena, a leadership lesson that you think is key that you've learned along the way.
I mean, I think that there are a couple of things. Michele touched on it a little bit, but I think allies are so important. I talked about Scott Rifford giving me the opportunity because, again, like my route to the White Sox organization isn't normally the normal path. And he has proven to be an ally to me and several people within the organization, giving them opportunities. And that leads me to the other point too, is that I think as you are progressing in your career, you have to have the confidence and the bravery to take advantage of opportunities, even if it is scary, and lean on those support systems. I lean on Christine O'Reilly quite a bit when we are going through different things, and just she's a wonderful sounding board for me as I have progressed through my career here at the White Sox as well.
And then Michele.
Sure, yeah, I'll jump in, and I take this question two different ways. One of the ways I think about this question is, my own progression in my leadership. And I think, Sheena, to your point, being agile and taking calculated risks has been the key to me, getting to this level in my career. So I would just say to everybody, take calculated risks, be agile. But now as a leader, as a person who leads and is inspiring teams every single day, I think it's critically important that we are authentic, that we are agile as leaders, and that we are fully engaged with our people. I think if never before, the COVID pandemic has made it really clear to us as leaders that we need to be connected with our people. We need to understand their needs. We need to check in on them. We don't know what we don't know about every single employee's experience. So being engaged, being authentic, and being agile, I think are all critically important to leadership.
And I want to ask everyone what you think the biggest barrier is for women who want a successful career in your respective industry. Sheena, I'll start with you this time.
Sure. I mean, again, like I think some of it goes back to what Michele has again touched on about those biases. I think understanding the value that anyone brings to a conversation with the right skills and experience is important. I think oftentimes the easiest path for people is something of familiarity, and we often overlook the contributions that people can make who come from different backgrounds, from different identities. And I think that's just so key that I can't emphasize that enough.
And I'll ask Elaine next, your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, just to piggyback on that, with Sheena saying familiarity. So I would say it's not just a barrier for women. I think what I've noticed in all the years in working in sports is the unwillingness to move. there's positions that open up in various areas of the country or even internationally in sports. And I meet a lot of young professionals and also women who don't want to move because they're familiar with where they live, and maybe their family and friends are there. And so sports teams, like, they don't have a huge number of staff, and sometimes you have to be willing to move for an opportunity. I did that working at the Eagles and moving to the Bears for an opportunity. So I'm one example, but I would say there's definitely a good chunk of people out there that just kind of want to stay where they are, and there's lots of opportunities out there to explore.
Yeah, having moved here from Philly myself and many, many, many cities before that, I can say it's not always a bad thing. You meet some great people along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at this panel. And now to you.
Yeah, Sheena talked earlier about having allies. To me, I think one of the biggest barriers that women have in male-dominated industries is lack of what I call sponsorship, which is basically a mentor on steroids. It's someone who is in the room when decisions are being made about people who are getting hired or promoted, or who's going to get that high visibility project. You need to have, people that are sponsoring you and take a vested interest in your career. And I think a lot of times women in male-dominated industries don't have as many sponsors, because a lot of times, people gravitate to people who are like themselves. And so I think if you can forge those relationships and really focus on relationships, not only in your current role, but where you want to go in the future, and really kind of allow others to be an advocate for you, I think it helps you be more successful along the way.
And Michele.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually glad you came to me last on this one, because, Sheila, Elaine, and Ann gave you some examples of institutional barriers, but I actually want to go and spotlight kind of a personal barrier that I think as women, sometimes we get in our own way. And it's something that I call the imposter syndrome. And if you actually Google this, like, there's a whole body of science around the imposter syndrome. But the imposter syndrome really is about, when you are from an underrepresented group in a space where you're one of the few women or the few people of color or whatever it may be, you sometimes are having a lot of negative self-talk about whether you belong in that space. So the imposter syndrome is something that we need to make sure we're constantly dealing with personally in everything that we do. So, hey, I'm supposed to be in this room, or yes, I am, supposed to be in this meeting, or yes, I am entitled to make this decision. We have to keep reinforcing for ourselves and having the confidence that we are where we are for a reason, and that we are totally fully capable of performing our roles. So I would just tell everyone, to be really mindful of the imposter syndrome, because it's real. And it even, for me, from time and time again, shows up, and I have to remind myself, wait a minute, you are the Chief People and Culture Officer, so you better say something about that. But, my first thought is, should I say it? Should I not? But you know what? We have to go forward and we have to speak up and lead.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm sorry, I stepped on something.
Sorry. What Michele said made me think of one really example recently. I'm the mom of two really young kids, a soon to be 3-year-old and a 11-month-old at home. And when I had my first, I struggled a lot with my professional identity. I found with myself that I compartmentalized a lot. And, as I was beginning this new chapter of my life as kind of a working mom, I struggled with the amount that I give of myself to my work and whether or not I could take that next step. And someone within the organization told me, there's value to you taking this next step. The fact that you are becoming a mom only enhances your experience and the perspective that you have and the contributions that you can make to us, especially in terms of communication. So, I mean, it was the point there, and this obviously is just a couple of years ago with my son, but I thought, oh yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I didn't somebody else had to tell me that for me to understand that. And I think it was a perfect example of what Michele is saying.
And that brings us to our next question. Balancing motherhood, to me, and this is just as an observer, I bow down to all of you professionals, has been tricky to say the least in this situation. I don't think there's ever been more asked of parents during this time. And Serena Williams, to me, has been, whether she likes it or not, a really, really public advocate for being a mother in sports. So I want to ask you all, how have you been able to balance this? And also, how does it play out in your industry as well, especially when the balance of men to women working in your industry is uneven? And Elaine, I would like to start with you because I've seen pictures of your kiddos on Instagram recently, so I know you can speak to this too.
Sure. So I actually have 3 kids. So I have an 8-year-old son, a 6-year-old daughter, and a almost 6-month-old daughter. And so I totally have been tested in terms of that work-life balance. And I think you have to realize that you are not going to be good at everything all the time. We're human. And so I would say when I first started being a mom, I didn't want to share any of those struggles at work because you always wanted to look like and feel like that you were put together. And I think it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And so like Sheena, really using motherhood to our advantage. While I started at the Bears, like we launched the first ever kids club, and we also launched a crib club, and I was able to give my knowledge firsthand of what it's like to be a mom and the kind of things that my kids would be interested in. I also just want to show a good example for all my kids and show my son that women can just be as impactful in the workplace, as men. And so I would say being a mom has definitely shown its challenges, but you have to see the bright side of being able to kind of set that example for your kids that you can have both, even though it's not going to be perfect all the time.
And for whoever else on the panel, please just chime in as you see fit.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I have 3 boys. They're 18, 19, and 22. So big kids equal big problems. So it never gets any easier. I'm just coming to realize that. But to answer your question, I mean, I found it really is critical to just put some structure and control around your day and your schedule, especially for many of us, this kind of hybrid remote work environment with COVID, putting some parameters around when you start your workday, when you end your workday, being really diligent about being organized. Me, my husband, and my 3 boys, we every night sit down and we talk about the schedule and the calendar for the next day. So we know who needs who when, who's going to be on a panel and can't speak. I have a sign hanging outside of my office door now that says, "Do not disturb, recording in process." So, things like that you have to do to just stay on your game. It's critical, but I think what Elaine said is so true. I've given up on trying to be perfect at all of this. I think about this as it's work-life integration. I don't actually think there's balance. I think it's integration, and you do what you have to do when you have to do it. Sometimes it's more work, sometimes it's more family. And going back to being an authentic leader, I think the key to leading as a working parent is to just be honest about that, and role model for other parents who have kids coming up that it's okay to sometimes not be okay, or to have to miss something, or to have to take a day off, or whatever it may be. But that's how I think about navigating work life.
And I would just add, we're all in this together. I mean, everybody is impacted, whether you have young kids, older kids, or caring for, elderly parents. Everyone is impacted. And what has helped for me, structure, so completely agree there, but also just having open lines of communication with my boss, the folks that are on my team, my husband, my kids, and really not being afraid to express when I need help and flexibility. And then on the flip side, when either my team or people that I care for need help and flexibility, that I'm giving that in return. And I think the more open we are and having conversation, we're able to kind of manage through what needs to get done.
And I feel like I can't really add anything because I can barely get my toddler dressed in the morning, successfully. Like giving out advice as a working parent is probably not my game, but the one thing that I will say is like the realization that what the pandemic has and this virtual work from home space is that everyone now gets to see that little window, and it does help nurture that empathy that everybody else has. Like I've been on numerous calls, and I just decided that I'm just going to stop apologizing for, my toddler busting in with his Batman cape hanging off. And, I think people get it, which is a nice thing to have people understand.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's nice to see everybody having lives, and I think that I always enjoy seeing a kid cameo or hearing a dog on a conference call, but that's just me. And as we move to partly the sports conversation of this, it's interesting because in some ways, I think it's hard to be a women's sports fan because your fandom is sometimes questioned. What can women leaders and allies do to validate women in sports and other male-dominated industries? Anne?
Well, I can talk more about male-dominated industry, like working in beer.
Yes.
But I think first and foremost, we need to hire more women. We need to praise the women that are in our organizations. We need to promote them. We need to ensure that they're getting the visible assignments that are going to give them the experience that's needed for them to become leaders. And I think it's really just building a culture that is inclusive and really allows people to thrive. And I think that's what's critical to ensure that women can advance in any industry.
And Elaine, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I was going to comment on the fandom part of that. So I think working in football, people think that the majority of our fans are male, and we're closer to 50-50 now, slightly more male, but definitely closer to 50-50. And so people will be surprised to hear that, we have season ticket holders, a lot of them female, and ones that prefer to take their girlfriends to the game instead of their husbands. And so we'll highlight stories like that and kind of celebrate that, because I think sometimes like you just assume that it's just a completely male dominated space, and it's not. And so, on the marketing side, we definitely do our best to try to highlight more stories like that to show the balance.
And Sheena?
Yeah, it's interesting. This particular season, and Leila, we've actually talked about this quite a bit. I mean, we saw our fans in terms of TV viewership grow overall, but specifically among 18 to 34-year-old women, the numbers were like 600%. It was a crazy amount, but it told us that our female White Sox fans were out there. And what we did was we worked very closely with our social media manager, who's just really wonderful, and some really wonderful designers who helped us call out for those stories. So that's like the fun part of what I feel like I can do, is that I can help people feel seen. Some of these female fans feel seen. And speaking from my own experience, I've always been a huge sports fan. I grew up in a sports family. And now that I'm a mom, I feel like I also kind of direct where the discretion, the disposable income goes. So like, why shouldn't we be marketing and speaking to those fans? I want them to feel seen.
And Michele?
Yeah, I'll just wrap by saying, two things. On the fan side, I totally agree with what Sheena said. We've got to engage our female fans, engage them, highlight the stories of them, etc., because it just gives us more, kind of proof positives that women are engaged in the sport. And then on the employee side, I think what Anne said was spot on. I mean, we need to sponsor, going back to that comment, Anne, you made about sponsorship. For those of us who are already here, we need to make sure we're wrapping our arms around our other women coming up in the younger generation. We need to mentor them and be sponsors for them in the rooms where the big decisions are being made, so that they can come behind us and grow and thrive and learn in our organizations.
And I want to follow up a little bit with Anne, because the marketing side of it really does play to women not being your typical, and I say that with quotes around it, beer consumers. But why is it so important? Sounds like a silly question, but one that needs to be discussed, to market toward your female clients as well as your males.
Sure. Well, I mean, first we look at the numbers, right? 50% of the population is women. 85% of purchasing decisions are made by women. 50% of alcohol consumers are women. So I cannot grow my businesses unless I am relating and connecting with women. And I think what's so interesting is, even though, you know, the size and just the influence they have in our businesses is so strong, when you talk to women, about 75%, at least our numbers say, women feel that businesses aren't getting them. So there's still more work that needs to be done. I think brands that recognize that women not only are important to kind of grow the business, but can also have a positive impact on the overall brand image, I think, you know, are really groundbreaking. I look at things that Modelo has done, where had started featuring women in advertising. And, you know, there was conversation, all right, if you focus too much on women, are you going to alienate men? And we found the exact opposite. So women are important not only because of the purchasing power that they bring, but if you're showing an inclusive, you know, being inclusive in the way you're marketing, everyone responds. So I think you can't get away with not marketing to women if you want to be a successful brand.
And as somebody also in marketing, Elaine, I want to ask you, what can we do as a community to motivate women who are in pursuit of a role like yours? And that question goes for all four of you, but I figured I'd start with Elaine.
So I would say definitely, you know, take a seat at the table and be proactive about, you know, projects that some people don't want to take on. Like, there's projects that can be scary to other people and they don't want to take it on, but sometimes the biggest risk has the biggest reward. And so, you know, really, I would say that's one. I would say understanding data and how that affects the world of marketing and how it makes you a better marketer. And also just be, you know, ready for opportunities. We have internships, or what we call seasonal positions, at the Bears. And so I've seen, you know, interns really rise up because they treated that as like a, you know, 9-month or 1-year interview, and really stepping it up the whole time. And you just never know when opportunities open up, and you never know who's watching. And so I would say, you know, definitely add value where you can, because you never know if that could be your next step, you know, within your organization or even outside.
Sheena.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more with what Elaine said. I feel like using your voice, and again, I think Anne and Michele both touched on it too, is the empathy card. I think one of the things that is so important is just the fact that we can bring more empathy to all of the responsibilities that we have. And if we can add that a little bit, I mean, I think the work of the organization is best when we can add that into the mix.
Michele.
Yeah, I would just add on, I think I agree with everything that's just been said. I think critically, it's really important to focus on building relationships, and to letting people know what you're interested in doing. Because if people don't know what you're interested in doing, how might they know to tap you for an opportunity? And I could spend half an hour telling you about how, you know, me letting people know that I was interested in something gained me that new opportunity. So I would just say, use your voice, speak up, and build relationships.
And Anne.
Same thing. You got to raise your hand. You got to put yourself out there. You got to make yourself scared. If you're not scaring yourself a little bit every day in your job, you know, you're probably not in a good place, right? Like, you got to keep pushing yourself.
Yeah, this is all tremendous advice. I can't say thank you enough to this panel. And now we have some time for Q&A. So once again, the reminder is, if you have a question for the panel, direct message, send a private message to CWSPR in your right-hand side of your Zoom chat. I was going to say right-hand screen. That doesn't exactly make any sense, but we have a few of them here. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking you all. One of them is, being women in power, do you feel the need to change your tone with others at the table when you're trying to get your voice or your opinion heard? Sheena, I don't think I've started with you yet, so I'll start with you.
So I touched on it in the first question. I was lucky enough when I worked at PCI, we talked about this a lot in terms of presentation overall, because you're working with a variety of clients, a variety of people, a lot of them men. You know, I don't think that I changed my tone. I think this is just kind of how I talk, but I am very much aware because of the role that I play within the organization in terms of communications and PR, of posture and tone and you know what, to be honest, I've always just really talked and laughed really loudly. And I think those are things that just kind of come with who I am.
Michele?
Yeah, I love that. That was great, Sheena. I am who I am. Like, what you see is what you get. So there's no changing the tone. What I will do, however, is I really try to understand who I'm dealing with, and how to best approach that person. If I'm trying to get something done or trying to get something approved, it's like, okay, how will this resonate with that leader? How should I take this to him or her so that, they'll buy into it? So my tone is going to be the same, but my approach and how I present whatever it is to the person might be different based on who the person is.
Elaine?
Yeah, I would echo what Sheena and what Michele said, but I would just add that it's important to be authentic and also have a sense of humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. I think that just lightens up the mood and lightens the conversation as well.
And Anne?
Yeah, I agree. You've got to be real. You got to be who you are. People connect best, when you are being authentic, and they can see through it if you're not. So I think to be effective, I agree with Michele. It's very helpful when you know your audience, because again, you're trying to make connections. And so if you know how they approach things, what's important to them, you can put that, in the forefront as you're engaging with them, just to have a better interaction.
Yeah, homework always plays. Here's question number 2 from our guests. This one says, I'm a white man, but I'm extremely interested in organizations that promote diversity and inclusion. How can I and men who look like me help to promote diversity and inclusion within an organization? I'll start with Michele.
You know what? Thank you for that question. That's a great question. I would say just get engaged. Get engaged. Many of our organizations either have diversity councils or they have affinity groups, employee groups, business resource groups, whatever you want to call them. Get engaged. I have a very interesting view on diversity, and here is what it is. Every single one of us brings a dimension of diversity to every single group and every single discussion. So whether you be a white male, Black female, whatever you are, you bring a dimension of diversity, and your perspective is going to be different than everyone else's at the table. You're going to see things that other people at the table may not see. So you know what? Bring your voice, get engaged, and show up, because you actually have a really important perspective that everyone needs to hear and share.
Anne?
If you're in a position of influence, mentor and sponsor people that don't have the same backgrounds as you, and really be a fighter for them. Teach them what you know, sing their praises, and allow them to grow, to however you can help them.
Elaine?
I was just going to add, be intentional when certain projects come up. I know at the Bears, we have a variety of different marketing projects and brand projects that we work on. And we are intentional about looking for diversity in the talent that we hire. And so it really starts from there. Just making sure that you're looking at women, that you're looking at minorities, that you're looking at a variety of different talent to ensure that they kind of get into the pipeline.
Sheena?
Yeah, and I just think be an ally to people in your own career. Ask questions. I know we have a number of coworkers here and peers who are really just friends and are interested to understand what that experience is like, and the fact that they're asking questions, or the fact that they realize that they don't know everything, is a good sign. And I've told people who have asked those questions, it takes something to be able to admit that you don't know everything about any person's experience, and to want to learn to know more and then advocate for them.
Our next question is, with the Marlins hiring of Kim Ang as their general manager, this last week has been a huge step for women in the front office. How soon do you think more hires like this will begin? Michele, you're smiling. I see you.
I'm so excited.
We're all smiling, for the record.
I still have goosebumps about Kim. I mean, this is just so amazing and so incredible. I mean, I think we're going to see more of this trend. I mean, I think leaders across baseball and across sports generally appreciate and value what women bring to the table. You know, quite frankly, at baseball, I mean, we have a very high number of our employees are women, like 40% of our employees are women. So, you know, this is, to me, this was just, it was time for it to come, and it was ultimately going to happen, and it did. And I think there's more of that. I mean, I am the first people and culture officer, you know, at Commissioner's senior executive team. So I think that we are going to see more and more women showing up in senior roles across sports and marketing. So I just say that, you know, we have to support each other, sponsor each other, and help bring each other along.
I think we're seeing a lot more front-facing positions too in the NFL. So Elaine, I'll ask you the same question next. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I hope as soon as possible. I hope we see, we definitely see more women in the higher ranks. You know, our CFO is a woman, and so, you know, organizations definitely need to lead by example. The Kim Eng thing is so great because I want my daughter to see women in leadership positions that look like her. And so, you know, that was great news. And I think it's going to continue as long as we continue to support each other.
Anne, your thoughts?
You know, I don't know who or when will be next, but what I can say is a mother to a 20-year-old daughter who probably, you know, 10 years ago, probably would have never imagined a career in sports. I'm so excited for her, you know, to think about all the different opportunities across so many different industries. And now sports could be that, industry too, that could be considered, you know, for women to really think, gosh, I could come in and someday lead an organization. That's a great thing for everyone.
Sheena.
And look, there's a long road ahead. I think, you know, it's a wonderful, I was so excited on Friday. You know, the fact that Kim actually started her career with the White Sox organization back in 1990 as an intern, really just kind of proved to me that the organization is committed from, you know, when it wasn't a thing to bringing in women into their organization. So, you know, it's wonderful for me, but there's a long road ahead. I think I said this to the group on Friday, but, you know, I hope when my daughter is, you know, able to join the workforce, and, you know, this will be something that we don't have to celebrate it, that Kim will be the first, but she won't be the last, as Kamala has said. But I just think I want this to normalize seeing different women, different people, different experiences in all parts of all sports organizations.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about seeing somebody at that top level of the baseball operations side of this. And it's definitely rung with me, that's for sure. Another question that we have, what characteristics of the mentors throughout your careers have had the greatest impact for you? Did it matter if they were also women, or was gender not a factor? And it was more of a result of how they guided you and allowed you to grow. I'll start with Elaine.
Oh my goodness. I've had a lot of great mentors. And I would say that, so the question was, were they all male? Was that part of the question? Part
of the question was, I think I lost it here on the side. Just the characteristics. Did it matter if they were also women or not?
No, I don't. I would say that there's bits and pieces that you can take from each of the mentors that you have. I would say there's really two types of mentors, right? Like there's ones that could be assigned to you. I know some organizations have mentorship programs where you can get assigned a mentor, but I would say the most valuable ones that I've had are the ones that just have developed naturally. And so people that you've, you know, met throughout your career, they could be even peers at times. And so I would say get a mixture of valuable feedback from both. I would say, you know, definitely the ones that are assigned to you, and also the ones that just happen naturally.
Anne?
The mentors that I think have been most impactful in my career really saw more in me than I saw in myself. They had that insight. They knew me really well. They knew my strengths. They knew my opportunities and could point me in a direction to help me get better. I've had many male mentors, and I think that has been helpful, just so I could better understand how to relate to men in a male-dominated industry, and how I could be more effective influencing males. But then, I've also had a lot of female mentors who have really helped me figure out how to navigate being female in a male-dominated world, and how to balance, well, if you call it balance, but how to figure out, doing as much as you can in a 24-hour period every day.
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance.
Great.
And next I'll go to Sheena.
Yeah, I wish I could just like copy and paste what Ann just said, because I totally agree. The best mentors that I have had throughout my professional career have been the people that understood me and where those strengths are. But I also think that I have learned very well from some of the male people in the professional world who have really taught me about, again, understanding your audience, using your strengths to help get what you want out of the workplace.
And then Michele.
Yeah, sure. So to this day, I keep what I call a board of mentors. And my mentors are from every background, race, ethnicity, etc. And I actually believe in something called situational mentorship, because at every stage in your career, at every pivot in your career, you're going to need somebody to mentor you on something different. So at any time, I may have 2 or 3 people that are mentoring me on different aspects of my career. So that's how I think about mentorship. And I think it's also really important that we have mentors that are inside our organization and outside of our organization, so that we keep a perspective that's very balanced.
And I think this might be a good one to end on. What is a moment when you are proud to be a woman working in your respective fields? Sheena.
Ooh, this is a good one. I'm really proud that I am able to, my dad passed away earlier this year, and I didn't get to be with him because of all the COVID stuff. And, I don't know that the team that my dad grew up cheering for, he ever thought his daughter would be doing what she does, having conversations with people that he's only read about in the newspaper, right? And he's had very strong opinions about everything with the organization. But I think before he passed, he was really happy to know that I'm sitting where I'm sitting, and that I'm actually making a difference with a team that he genuinely loved.
Anne?
I'm going to say something similar. I'm a native South Sider. I grew up a White Sox fan. My parents have been very influential on me. One of the proudest moments I had in my career was when Modelo became the official beer sponsor of the White Sox, because it was just something that connected me with my family, and something I was very proud of. So,
Elaine?
Yeah, I am one of 4, and I have 3 older brothers, and so I guess I've gotten used to being the only female sometimes in a large group. But I would say, just being at the NFL for so long, especially when I first started, I was part of a program where I was one of the only women sitting at the table, and I think you're just really proud of yourself. And I think it's good to pinch yourself and say that you're proud of something that you accomplished. If you're at a table where, you're the only woman there, I think I would say there's something, in the past when I first started being an intern in the NFL.
And Michele?
Yeah, sure. So, my proudest moment actually it's really on a more personal note. I took my mom to a conference one time that I was speaking at, and it was a women's leadership conference, and I spoke on a panel. And when the panel ended, I walked up to her, and it's the first time she ever saw me speak on a panel, and her eyes just welled with tears. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Mom, what's wrong with you? This was a great event. People are happy and laughing. She says, I'm sitting in a room with 300 multicultural women lawyers from around the world. She said, never in my lifetime did I think I'd see such a thing. She's like, and you were on the panel. She's like, you don't have any idea what this means to me. And to me, at that very moment, that just meant the world to me, in thinking about my career, where I've been, what I've been able to accomplish. And so for me, that right there is success. And that's really all I need.
All right. I love ending this on some good vibes. And I think that that's a great place to wrap up. We've got about a minute and 30 seconds. And I just want to say thanks again to everyone who signed up to listen to these amazing women speak. I have learned so much. This doesn't happen without you. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. And then again, to our outstanding panel. Once again, Ann Legan. Then we have Michele Meyer-Shipp, who just spoke, Sheena Quinn, and Elaine Delos Reyes. Thank you to all for offering your expertise, your knowledge, and just being so candid. And again, to our sponsor as well, Modelo Especial, who is helping make events like this possible. Cannot say thank you enough to them, and the White Sox for putting this all together. Can't say thanks enough to all of you, once again, for joining this Game Changers panel. I certainly learned a thing or two. I hope you all did as well. Any final remarks before we let everybody go at 4 o'clock? Ann, Elaine, Sheena, or Michele?
I just want to say thank you to Leila for making this happen and navigating such a wonderful conversation. You're a staple in Chicago sports scene, and we hope you stay here forever.
I appreciate that. It's great to see you very much. Anybody else?
Just thank you, Leila. Thank you so much. This was a great discussion.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Elaine, good luck tonight. And Ann, thanks again to Constellation. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you have a great evening, and thanks for being a part of this.
Bye. Take care.
Thanks.